Good morning. Thank you so much for being with us so early in the morning. My name is Jose Garza and I am your Travis County District Attorney. As our nation struggles to emerge from the deadliest pandemic in a century, we are also continuing to struggle with an alarming increase in gun violence and homicides across the country and right here in our own community. This increase has occurred even as the overall crime rate has dropped. Early data shows that increasing violence across the country is concentrated among communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But regardless of the cause, every life lost is a tragedy for our community, and we have a responsibility to do all we can to prevent loss of life here in Travis County. And I know that we can. I know that by using evidence-based strategies, by marshaling and coordinating our resources, and by listening to the communities most impacted, we can stop this rising tide of violence. This morning, we are making public the District Attorney's Office's plan to do just that. First, we must focus our resources on solving and prosecuting violent crimes like murder. Earlier this year, the Travis County District Attorney's Office created a major crimes and homicide unit to ensure that these crimes are handled by our most experienced prosecutors. To date, our office has secured over 500 indictments for crimes of violence like murder, sexual assault, and gun violence. Over 70% of all firearm-related offenses that have come to our office have either been charged or resulted in a conviction, and we are prioritizing our resources to indict the remaining firearm cases that are waiting to be charged. I want to be as clear as I can. If you pick up a gun, pull the trigger, and take someone's life in this community, you will be arrested and you will be held accountable. But if we are serious about ending violence in our community, we have to do more than punish people after they have caused harm. We have to do all we can to prevent violence before it happens. That's why, in addition to traditional prosecution strategies, our office will also work to implement diversion strategies that are proven to reduce future crime. The data is clear that if we can intervene in firearm cases before serious violence occurs, then we have a chance to make sure that it never does. In many cases, that intervention will mean getting guns out of the hands of people who are at risk of committing future violence. For example, when domestic violence escalates, the risk of death to a female victim when the male abuser has access to a firearm increases by 1,000%. But with improved data and communication, we can intervene in cases of domestic violence and prevent homicide. In some cases, the intervention necessary will be to make sure that people at risk of committing gun violence have access to services and a life free of violence. But the truth is, there is only so much we can do once a criminal case has reached our office. And so we must do more. That's why I'm so grateful to my colleagues at the City of Austin, who have been working with national experts and members of our own community to prevent violence before it happens. As a result of work that started in 2019 by Councilmember Alter and her colleagues, the City of Austin recently established an Office of Violence Prevention that's working to implement a community violence intervention program. This approach has proven successful in other cities across the country. But I believe that for those efforts to have the best chance of success, the District Attorney's Office has a responsibility to contribute and to support that work. That's why our office will be appointing a liaison to the Office of Violence Prevention at the City of Austin so that we can share our data, our expertise, and our resources. Finally, if we are serious about addressing violence in our community, we must acknowledge a cold, hard truth. Too often, our criminal justice system fails victims of violent crime. And when we fail victims of violent crime, we perpetuate a cycle of trauma that often leads to future violence. Our office recently announced the creation of a standalone unit of trauma-informed counselors to work with victims of crime throughout the criminal justice process, and we have conducted extensive trauma training for our staff. But we must do more, and that's why today I'm also proud to support the establishment of a trauma recovery center for victims of crime in our community. Services like a trauma recovery center can help victims to heal and can help reduce future violence. I am so grateful to the national experts, the local leaders, and to the people most impacted by violence who have come together over the last several months to help refine our approach at the District Attorney's Office to addressing this increase in violence. I am proud of the work my colleagues at Travis County and the City of Austin have done to make our community more safe. But there is still more work for us to do. And I'm confident that through a comprehensive and unified approach, we can end the cycle of violence in our community. I am really grateful and excited to introduce you to Jill Henderson, who is one of the co-chapter coordinators of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice.
Thank you. As mentioned, I'm Jill Henderson, and I'm the co-chapter coordinator of our Austin chapter. I joined Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice because of the initiative and the national network of survivors, which we stand over 90,000 members strong. We're working together in order to prevent violence and advocate for smarter public policy, safety policies that prioritize prevention, healing, and treatment. Our family experienced a loss, our first loss in 2007 when my stepson was taken from us with gun violence. Then later, more recently in 2017, my son, our middle child, Bakari, was murdered violently in Greece, and he was beaten to death. So having someone taken from gun violence and then beaten to death is just a different type of trauma for our family. It's a very personal experience to have someone physically taken away from you from the hands of another. So what our family would have been able to experience with a trauma recovery center is why I'm standing here now, because we believe that having services available to victims as far as legal representation, having someone to help you with your victim compensation packets, someone to help you with your trauma recovery, and have a licensed counselor at our disposal at no charge is something that victims deserve and something victims should have access to. Because it's a very long healing process, it's one that's a cycle that continues to spiral around. It's not one that's healed within 6 months or a year. It's a lifetime of healing that victims experience. And a trauma recovery center in Austin would give victims what they need. It would give them the support system that they need and give them the resources that they need. I believe in accountability for my son's killers, and I also believe that the strategies being laid out here today can help break that cycle of crime and make us safer as a community, so that what happened to my family won't happen to anyone else. Again, we are still going through this process, we're struggling, and we're trying to get justice for the murders of our sons. Thank you.
It's my pleasure now to introduce you to Clarence Watson, who is also a co-chapter coordinator for the Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Clarence Watson. I am the co-chapter for Austin chapter of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice, and a survivor as well. Growing up here in Austin, I witnessed domestic violence. I am a survivor of childhood sexual assault, also a survivor of gun violence. Like so many others, I've made mistakes, but we realize hurt people hurt people. I know firsthand on how unresolved trauma can lead to a life of pain and struggle. Communities like mine have been left behind as they experience the violence and trauma that continue to take more lives. I have worked hard to get my life back on track, but as a survivor and as survivors, the only thing that we want is for those individuals the only thing that we want is for people not to go through the same struggle that we've been through. If present at the time, trauma recovery centers, violence prevention approach would have been made a massive difference in the lives of me and my family. I would have had access to free counseling, crisis intervention services that would have helped me heal from my trauma years ago. These services have been proven to work, and they can help end the cycle of violence and trauma and incarceration that so many like myself have fell into. We can't rely solely on law enforcement for safety. So I'm looking forward to working with my community, in my community, to make this vision a reality. Thank you.
I'm so grateful for Mayor Steve Adler's courageous leadership on this issue and grateful to welcome him this morning.
So we're fortunate to live in a safe community. Austin is a safe community. But we have to work to maintain that status, especially in the face of rising homicide rates in the country that we're also seeing in our city as well. District Attorney Garza, I want to say thank you on behalf of the community for this initiative. Thank you for doing your effort to help us maintain that status. I applaud your efforts in this city to make sure that we are working with the community to reduce gun violence before it happens, and then to prevent it again after an arrest, and to hold people accountable when they commit acts of violence in our community. To be clear, the public wants and deserves accountability from criminals who commit violent acts. But more importantly, the public wants their local leaders to prevent the violence from occurring at all. The City Council is joining you in this effort, doing what we can do. I'm proud to have been part of a council that funded, on a resolution brought by Councilmember Alter, an Office of Violence Prevention. I appreciate your efforts to add to the existing collaboration by appointing a liaison to that office, someone that will help support the existing infrastructure of that office, while also providing expertise and resources and best practices to coordinate across jurisdictions. Austin is one of the safest cities in America, but to remain one of the safest, we have to be proactive in addressing crime. That's what this effort is. District Attorney Garza, thank you.
We are really fortunate this morning to have with us a national expert in violence prevention, someone who has been key both to the efforts of the city and to our efforts in Travis County. I'm really pleased to welcome Dr. Chico Tillman, who is a senior director at the University of Chicago and who has been part of the National Fund Peace Initiative, which has helped to ensure that cities like Austin can continue to be safe. Dr. Tillman.
First of all, I want to thank Mayor Adler, DA Garza, the City Council, and the Public Health Department for having the vision, the courage, and taking the initiative to get out in front of a national pandemic that's sweeping across America. When we think about gun violence, according to one of my colleagues, Jens Ludwig, an economist, is everybody's problem because it changes the way we look at life, it changes the way we live, it changes the places we go, and also it impacts our life in terms of taxes and the way our economy works. What we want to do today in Austin is move forward with a comprehensive strategy where we utilize individuals in the community with lived experience who will complement the great work of public safety officers. They're not here to replace police officers, they're here to complement the work of public safety officers or police officers so that police can narrowly focus on crime, so that they can focus on violence that breaches the point where crime has committed. However, individuals who are credible messengers or violence interrupters will be individuals hired in the community, live in the community, have knowledge and intel of things going on in the community so they can prevent things on the front end. It's critical that we leverage every asset within the ecosystem to combat and quell violence in Austin. I applaud you for taking the initiative to step forward by using this comprehensive strategy of working with individuals who live in the community. You are ahead of the game and you will see a decrease in violence. What we've seen across America in 2 years, on average, decrease of up to 50% in homicides and 38% in shootings. Everywhere there has been a comprehensive strategy that combats violence. In California, they saw as much as a 76% decline. So this is the right thing to do. This is the right time to do. The funding is available. And also it will create a better life for everybody in Austin. Just a small tidbit. Typically, in most communities, based upon a Boston survey of 29 years, violence occurs by 5% of the population. 5% of the population of city blocks within the city. If we address the root causes of violence for those 5%, we can cure and solve the epidemic of violence in Austin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tillman. We are ahead of the curve here in Austin, ensuring that our city stays safe, in part because of the leadership and foresight of Councilmember Alter, and I'm grateful to welcome her this morning.
Good morning. My name is Allison Alter, and it's my honor and privilege to represent District 10 on the Austin City Council. I want to thank District Attorney Garza and everyone up here who's joining with me to combat gun violence as a pandemic in our community. As an elected official, I've had to offer condolences far too many times for communities and individuals affected by gun violence. My very first week at City Hall, one of my staff members lost a close relative in a horrible gun and domestic violence related incident. As a friend, I've had to find the words to console after a mentally ill parent twice managed to get a gun, and with the second purchase hurt her husband before taking her own life. As a mother, I've had to drop my children off at school the day after an active shooter incident. Had to figure out, how do you let go? Like everyone up here, I need to make sure that I can say that I've done everything possible to stop this epidemic. Gun violence, as we've said over and over today, is on the rise across the country. Here in Austin, we are also experiencing that. Historically, our system has been reactive to violence, when what we must do is address the root causes and prevent violence from happening in the very first place. I really believe this is a problem that can be solved, and I'm very proud for the work that we are doing at the city and the county and with the district attorney to tackle this challenge in new and innovative ways. We must treat violence not only as a public safety issue, but as a public health issue, because by taking a preventative approach and using a public health model, we can stop violence before it begins. That's why in August of 2019, following the mass shooting in El Paso, I sponsored the creation of a gun violence task force. I'm deeply grateful to the work and commitment of those task force members, many of whom are here today. The creation of an Office of Violence Prevention funded by the City of Austin was a key recommendation of that task force, and I was proud to author a budget amendment to fund and establish that office in the summer of 2020. Across the nation, evidence-based strategies developed and implemented by this type of work have been demonstrated to have a positive impact on preventing and reducing violence and harm, as Dr. Tillman just discussed. I'm so excited that our Office of Violence Prevention is a key part of today's collaboration with Director Miles, a key leader in the work being done locally, and she will speak next and provide more information about the Office of Violence Prevention. I want to note, though, that the Office of Violence Prevention was in motion before the pandemic. The pandemic, however, underscored the value and need for this approach. National data suggests that gun violence is on the rise, both because of the increased laxity of our gun regulations, but also because during the pandemic, many of the programs and interventions we consider effective to prevent violence have been disrupted by COVID. These trends reinforce the need to do violence prevention work and the value of the programs and interventions that already exist. We must continue to implement a comprehensive, strategic, and proactive approach tailored specifically to Austin and Travis County, and that's what we're talking about doing here today. This is long-standing work that we must remain committed to day after day. Every single day, gun violence impacts our community, and too often it is disproportionately impacting communities of color and women. So I don't know about you, particularly the elected officials up here, but I'm really tired of sending my thoughts and prayers to victims of gun violence, and I know there are steps that we can take to address this epidemic. As we mourn the dead, let's fight for the living. I'm committed to that work, and I know each of you are as well. Thank you.
And because of that foresight, I am pleased to introduce to you Michelle Myers, who leads the Office of Violence Prevention at the City of Austin.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Miles, and I lead the Office of Violence Prevention. Gun violence doesn't occur in a vacuum, but all too often exists in communities who've experienced chronic divestment, creating under-resourced environments prone to high degrees of stress and instability. If America sneezes, communities impacted by divestment catches a cold. Right now, America is experiencing more than just the sniffles. Therefore, it is important for us to address gun violence through holistic policies designed to promote safety, healing, empowerment, and community cohesion. When the community called for an expansive approach to public safety, the City of Austin leadership listened and created the Office of Violence Prevention, which was one of many recommendations made by the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, Gun Violence Task Force, and lifted up by Councilmember Alter, among others. The Office of Violence Prevention takes an equity-focused public health approach to identifying the root causes of violence and uses this knowledge to invest in targeted interventions that promote hope, healing, prosperity, peace, and safety in our community. The Office of Violence Prevention embraces collaborative approaches to addressing gun violence, centering the co-creation of this work around collective wisdom and experiences of individuals and communities most impacted by violence. This allows for contextualized understanding, leading to innovative solutions designed to apply the appropriate interventions at the appropriate time. I am pleased that the Travis County District Attorney's Office has appointed Amber Goodwin as the liaison to the Office of Violence Prevention to help coordinate violence intervention programs within Austin and Travis County. This collaboration is crucial to aligning our resources and maximizing our impact. In September, the Office of Violence Prevention, in collaboration with Travis County, Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, applied for a grant from the Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women to establish a standardized firearm surrender protocol in domestic violence cases. In addition, the Office of Violence Prevention has a contract with Lock Arms for Life to implement a safe gun storage public awareness campaign to include distribution of gun locks. This is just the beginning. These interventions, along with our contract with Dr. Tillman to implement community violence intervention programming in Austin, represent some of our initial investments in the health and safety of our community. Thank you.
I'm also pleased this morning to welcome Selena Shi, who is head of the Austin Medics Association and a member of the Gun Violence Task Force, the City of Austin.
Hello, my name is Selena Shia, and I am president of the Austin EMS Association, and I want to thank District Attorney Garza for having us here today. As a paramedic, I have seen my fair share of gun violence. I have been the first ambulance on scene to a mass violence shooting event. I've responded to countless victims of intimate partner violence. I have seen many suicides. Because of this, as president, one of my first actions was to work with City Council to bring forward a resolution that would increase Stop the Bleed training in our Austin high schools and also provide equipment in the case of a school shooting so that people like Councilmember Alter do not have to be scared for their kids, and that they know that people know how to take care of these events and do better for our schools. We should be able to do better than that. In EMS, we talk about how prevention is the best medicine. That's why we give away free car seats. That's why we sponsored a Stop the Bleed program. In 2019, doctors across the country were already calling gun violence a public health emergency. This happened after the Dayton shootings, after the El Paso shootings, which brought forward the resolution that Councilmember Alter and others brought to create the Gun Violence Task Force. I really wanted to serve on this task force and was appointed by Councilmember Harper Madison. And what we realized is that this issue takes so many different forms in our community and looks really different. But we also realized that gun violence is both predictable and preventable. I am so excited to be able to follow through on the work that report created, including the creation of a gun violence task force. I'm also so excited to continue that work that council has done in other areas, including providing for specialized teams between paramedics, firefighters, and police officers to respond to gun violence and also have a presence downtown. And also their investment in equipment, making sure that downtown is safe. So gun violence looks really different, and I am really, really excited for this next step for District Attorney Garza to have a liaison so that we can use the data to better understand how best to respond to this public health emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena. You know, the collaboration between the County Attorney's Office and the District Attorney's Office has and will continue to be key to addressing gun violence in our community, and I'm so grateful for County Attorney Garza's partnership and grateful to welcome her this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you to DA Garza and our city and community leaders for coming together for this extremely important issue. While the siloed nature of our government allows for subject matter expertise on issues, it also creates obstacles when trying to come up with solutions for some of our biggest challenges. So I'm grateful to see this coalition here all working together for the same goal. We have a responsibility to find new and innovative ways of preventing gun violence. Far too long, our criminal justice system has been reactive and not proactive. True public safety cannot be achieved by only arresting and jailing. We must make violence prevention, and specifically in our office, we prioritize protection of domestic violence survivors a priority. My office is committed to data-driven policies that focus on violence prevention, and we have implemented reforms and increased resources that have already yielded great results. Our weapon forfeiture policy, for example, removes firearms from violent offenders. Our policy is a proactive approach requiring assistant county attorneys request weapon forfeiture within 48 hours as a bond condition in cases that involve family violence that pose a public safety concern or a safety concern for a victim of a crime. This also includes cases that involve use of a firearm, presence of a firearm, threats of violence, and threats of suicide. We've achieved the forfeiture of over 100 weapons since implementing this policy. Our Protective Order Division assists survivors of family violence obtaining legal protection from their abusers so they and their families can finally begin to move forward and live their lives free of fear. We've also created a new victim counselor and support staff positions with existing resources, because we understand that resources are hard to come by. This extra staff is helping to meet the needs of so many individuals, but we need more. The pandemic has not only exposed the severity of the epidemic that is domestic violence, it's also shown we have to find new ways to reach those who need our help the most. One significant change is that individuals are now able to call our office to apply for protective orders instead of having to come into the office, which was the previous practice, and we will continue to allow victims to call into our office even after, we get back to normal, whatever normal is from here. This has led to a huge increase in applicants and unfortunately the need to put new emphasis on the work of our high-risk team. Our high-risk team is composed of our office, the DA's office, APD, Sheriff's Office, and other stakeholders that identify some of the most violent abusers and work to protect their victims and provide them with resources. As another example of our commitment, I just this past month created a new position that will for the first time only focus on coordinating our high-risk team. And I'm excited that the District Attorney's Office will now also be coordinating this team with us as we move forward. And I'm confident that this increased collaboration will improve the great work that this team has done in our community for a long time. Research has shown that these policies described are effective, and we must continue to enforce weapon forfeiture, enact policies that prevent abusers and violent offenders from accessing firearms, and that is how we achieve true public safety, and our community deserves nothing less. Thank you.
Collaboration across jurisdictions here in the county is also a central and necessary aspect of our work to prevent violence, and I know that has been a high priority for County Judge Brown, and I'm grateful to welcome him this morning.
Thank you. I think it's one speaker after me. All right, so I'm Travis County Judge Andy Brown. I'm really grateful to be here today with leadership from Travis County and from the City of Austin to demonstrate our partnership in working towards crime prevention and against gun violence in our community. We've seen firsthand how gun violence can tear apart our community and make everybody less safe. There's way too many members of our community who have been victims of gun violence. In 2018, across the state of Texas, 174 women were killed by a male intimate partner, and the majority of those were murders by firearm. Women in Texas are 24% more likely to be murdered with a gun than women in other states. But there are absolutely steps that we can take here in Travis County together to address this serious problem. We can build on the successes supported by the City of Austin to prevent gun violence by being good partners and coordinating with the Austin Office of Violence Prevention. And we can do this by investing in intervention and prevention programs at the county level, which have been demonstrated to reduce gun violence and homicides by up to 60%. And we need to take guns out of the hands of those who are at high risk for committing an act of violence on an intimate partner relationship. No woman should live in fear that she or her children may be harmed by a violent partner with a gun. I want to thank District Attorney Garza, County Attorney Garza, and the City Council for their leadership. The Travis County Commissioners Court shares your commitment to keeping our community safe and doing all that we can to reduce gun violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. We're almost there. I'd like to introduce Louis Witchers, who is a board member for Texas Gun Sense.
Hello, my name is Louis Witchers. I'm a board member with Texas Gun Sense. We are privileged to appear with and or work with Ms. Henderson and Mr. Watson of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice, the Community Justice Action Fund, Dr. Tillman from the University of Chicago, Ms. Miles from the Austin Office of Violence Prevention, Ms. Chief from Emergency Medical, Mayor Adler, the Travis County District Attorney's Office, the County Attorney, and Judge Brown. As we all work together to prevent gun tragedies and violence, Texas Gun Sense is pleased that rather than just reacting to gun tragedies, all of us are proactively focused on preventing gun injuries and deaths through a multidisciplinary approach, such as a community violence intervention program. Besides working with gun violence prevention groups and political leaders, we also partner with Lock Arms for Life and emphasizing safe gun storage. No gun owner wants to be part of a news story in which a child or unauthorized person finds a firearm in a closet, a drawer, or underneath a mattress, and then unintentionally shoots a sibling, relative, friend, or himself. No gun owner wants to be part of a news story in which a firearm is stolen from a home or vehicle and then used in violent crimes such as a robbery, a shooting, or a homicide. Safe gun storage can help stop feeding stolen firearms into the illegal underground gun market. A well-run community violence intervention program using education, drug treatment, trauma treatment, and mediation can help stop the desire to obtain a firearm and then use it. Thank you.
I also want to thank Commissioner Shea, Councilmember Fuentes, the Travis County Domestic Violence Task Force, and Constable 5, who are also with us today. I am confident that through a collaborative approach that we can continue to ensure that Austin is a safe place to live. Thank you so much. We are available for pull-aside interviews, and you can coordinate through Ismael in the middle if you need us, and we'll be down in just a second. Thank you so much for coming out this morning.
Oh, hey, nice.